All right, so for those of you that are here, we'll go ahead and get started, and everybody else can join us as they get a chance. We'll put the check-in link in a couple of more times, but welcome to the Policy Department's answers to commonly asked questions and answers that you may have that we didn't know about. So go ahead and get checked in, and we'll get started here. All right, so the Policy Department has been gathering commonly asked questions, and today we're going to do our best to answer those questions and questions that you may have as well. So today, members from the Policy Committee will be covering the questions that we have gathered. We'll ask you to put your questions in the chat from wherever you're watching. We have people watching the chat for those questions. We are recording this session, so we ask that everyone remain muted and use the chat for questions. If there are more questions than we have time to answer, we will get the answers to those and do this again. So I want to let you know who's helping us out today. We have Tony Easter and Ben Singer. They are co-founders of the Respect Missouri Voters Coalition. Larry Bradley, myself, Virginia Stobbs, and Steve Price are volunteers on the Policy Committee. And so we're going to do our best to answer every one of your questions as well as we possibly can. So, Steve, go ahead and get started for us.
Okay, question one is who wrote the policy? Respect Missouri Voters Coalition has a volunteer-led policy department which held 25 town halls across Missouri for all citizens to share what they wanted in this constitutional amendment. At those town halls, citizens filled out surveys sharing specific input. That was followed by 2 policy summits to decide on the final policy. 2 attorneys who are experts on constitutional amendments and citizen initiatives help draft and vet the language to be both legally sound and to have the desired impact once the amendment is passed.
Okay, so what does the Respect Missouri Voters Amendment do? The amendment does basically 3 things. It requires the ballot summaries to be clear, unbiased, fair, accurate, and easy to understand. In other words, the amendment prohibits ballot titles from being misleading. Citizens may challenge ballot summaries by asking the courts to revise them to meet that criteria. It also prohibits the legislature from taking away the court's powers to correct misleading ballot language. This would override SB 22, the so-called Let Politicians Lie Act that was passed in 2025. All of this helps everyday voters understand the true and honest impact of what they're voting for. It also prohibits the legislature from overturning or changing initiatives passed by voters unless an 80% bipartisan supermajority sends the changes to voters to be approved. The amendment would ensure that the voters have the final say. It protects initiatives that are still in law or the Constitution that when an amendment goes into effect and in the future. So it affects those that are in effect now and ones that will go into effect in the future. Also protects the citizens' veto referendum petitions. Protects your rights as Missouri citizens to the constitutional freedom of the citizens' initiative and referendum process. It makes the initiative and referendum process a fundamental right, which establishes a higher legal protection from government interference. Prohibits the legislature from weakening the initiative and referendum processes, making it harder to gather signatures or to win at the polls. If the legislature does anything to weaken the initiative process before this passes, the Respect Missouri Voters Amendment would restore the process to what it was on January 1st, 2025.
Okay, next question. How is the legislature allowed to overturn the will of the people anyway? What law allows that? It's not that we have a law that allows it, we just have no law preventing it. Of the 21 states with a process for citizen-initiated state statutes, 11 have no restrictions on legislative alteration of voter-approved initiatives. 8 states have a supermajority vote or time requirement to alter a voter approved initiative, and 2 states require voter approval to amend or repeal voter approved initiatives. Unfortunately, Missouri's legislature has shown that the majority of its members are unwilling to respect the will of Missouri voters as a basic principle when they disagree with a petition's results at the poll. That's why we need Respect Missouri Voters Amendment to add that protection to our elections.
6 other states require some form of supermajority of the legislature to change the initiatives passed by voters. Arizona and Michigan both require 75%. Arizona passed a similar ballot initiative almost 30 years ago in 1998. Since partisanship has gotten even worse now, the Missouri voters who crafted this policy felt that 80% is now an appropriate number to ensure a robust bipartisan support before politicians can touch what the voters have passed.
Some people might ask, why should legislatures be able to propose any changes to initiative passed by the people? Well, times change and sometimes mistakes are made as well. In 2006, there was a minimum wage initiative that had an unintended consequence on firefighters' overtime pay. It caused major legal and fiscal issues for fire departments and municipalities all across the state. So the legislature passed a law to fix it 2 years later. So what we've done here with this proposal is we've built in a mechanism so that if there is something that we didn't anticipate that's causing a problem, then it can be fixed.
So why didn't we do a cooling off period instead? Like banning the legislature from making changes for 5 or 10 years after the people pass an initiative? Well, 2 reasons. First, people don't want to have the same fight every 5 or 10 years over their fundamental freedoms. If something's urgent and important, like the firefighter overtime pay, we want to be able to change it because it's obviously causing a problem. And it shouldn't have to wait 5 or 10 years in order to be fixed.
Okay, next question. Is this a partisan issue? No, the amendment is not right versus left. It's not Democrats versus Republican. It's the politicians versus the people. Both major parties, when they've been in the majority in the legislature, have passed laws to attack citizen initiatives. In 1992, Governor John Ashcroft vetoed a bill that the Democratic majority legislature passed to try to make the process harder. In his veto statement, Governor Ashcroft wrote, and I quote, "It is through the initiative process that those who have no influence with elective representatives may take their cause directly to the people." End quote. The truth is that politicians want all the power in their hands, not in the people's. The Respect Missouri Voters Amendment would stop politicians from taking away the people's power.
For number 8, what does this Respect Missouri Voters Amendment not do? The amendment does not revive anything that the legislature or voters already changed, such as paid sick leave or Clean Missouri. The amendment does not protect any measures placed on the ballot by the legislature, which often have deceptive language. The amendment does not advantage one segment of the state's population or one geographic location or type of geographic location over another. Each Missouri citizen has one vote, and the majority, 50% plus 1 or better, will determine the outcome of a proposal, just as it does today. The amendment does not prevent the legislature and voters from correcting unintended negative consequences of a past petition that are only discovered after passage, and the amendment does not prohibit new citizen initiatives from changing past initiatives.
All right, so we've gotten this question a couple times, not super frequently, but why does the amendment protect initiatives passed after January 1st, 2010? So there's a couple reasons. As we talked with voters and experts across the state through this process, it seemed like going back 15 years was something that had broad support. And there's a couple of reasons. Experts had encouraged us not to protect all initiatives that were ever passed over the entire last 117 years because, like Larry said earlier, times change. So that could draw unnecessary opposition for something that's no longer really a relevant issue. And we did not want to distract from our goal of stopping politicians from attacking citizen initiatives now and going forward. We want to protect initiatives that voters recently decided and all initiatives going forward, while leaving room for adjustments that have broad bipartisan support.
Okay, so how does this amendment ensure unbiased language and stop ballot candy? The amendment establishes stricter criteria for the ballot summaries. They must be clear, unbiased, fair, accurate, and easy to understand. It prohibits the ballot titles from being misleading, and it allows the citizens to challenge the ballot summaries by asking the courts to revise them to meet that criteria. It prohibits the legislature from taking away the court's power to correct misleading ballot language, which would override SB 22, the so-called Let Politicians Lie Act that was passed in 2025. All of this helps everyday voters understand what they're voting on.
Next question, what ballot will the amendment be on? The amendment should be on the November 2026 ballot, but the final decision on that is actually up to the governor, and he could put it on the August primary ballot in 2026 instead of waiting until November.
We sometimes hear about, or people have asked about, the legislature also putting something on the ballot to destroy the citizen initiative process and destroy majority rule. When we look at those two things in the ballot, how do we tell them apart? The legislature did indeed create in the September 2025 special session a constitutional amendment that is a misleading one. The intent of it is to completely deny the ability of Missouri's citizens to pass laws and install policies the citizens want. The legislature misnamed this the Protect Missouri Voters Amendment. What they really should have named it is the Protect Politicians Amendment. The Politicians Amendment would make it nearly impossible for citizens to pass measures at the ballot box by requiring any citizen initiative to get a majority in all 8 congressional districts. So failing in only one district could kill the citizen initiative. This revision would allow politicians or special interests to focus their attacks on just one district and kill a citizen initiative amendment. Further, the legislature's amendment proposal has a double standard in that it makes things easy for politicians. If the politicians put a measure on the ballot, their measure only needs a simple majority statewide. The politicians' proposed amendment will be Amendment 4 on the ballot next year. We don't have a number for ours yet. That's why we're still out gathering signatures. When we do have a number, we'll let you know what it is. Beyond that, we are advising voters to vote for respect. Remember that old Aretha Franklin song? RESPECT. Find out what it means to me. Just remember to vote for the amendment that respects your continued power as a Missouri voter. Don't vote for Amendment 4. Don't vote to protect politicians. Some people, as we see out here gathering signatures, people ask us, why bother? Won't politicians just overturn this amendment to the Constitution too? Well, if we pass this one, it takes away the tools the politicians have been using to overturn the will of the voters. They would be constitutionally banned from overturning the will of the voters. They would need to get an 80% bipartisan majority in both the House and the Senate just to put it on the ballot. What's more, they have to put it on the ballot to get a decision. They can't make this change on their own. They have to put it before us. And that ties the politicians' hands by setting a bar that can't be cleared for laws and amendments without the permission of the people. So there's some of the answers to some of the questions we have been getting and that we thought that you might have.
Yeah, so now any of you, if you want to put in the chat, if you haven't already, any questions that we may not have covered, we'll be more than happy to spend some time answering those for you.
So I see a question in the chat from Jane. Do you want me to handle that, Virginia?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So this is a great question, and we get versions of this all the time. So Jane asked, actually, Jane, do you want to just say it verbally?
Okay, I had to unmute. I've heard different things about the puppy mill law as to whether we could go back and fix it, because was that 2011, I think. So that's, you said we're going back to 2010. So
Yes.
can we do anything? If we're successful in 2026, will we have any way to fix that problem?
Sure. So for all the various issues that the legislature has, repealed or changed or put something on the ballot with trick language to change it, regardless of that, when our amendment, the Respect Missouri Voters Amendment, passes, it will protect anything that is still in law or the Constitution when that goes into effect. So it's not going to bring anything back from the dead or put anything back into law or put anything back in the Constitution. But it does mean that going forward, if someone wants to run another initiative to do something, including something similar to what was done before or something new and different, that will be protected. So it's not going to bring back a law that was already changed or repealed, or a constitutional amendment that was changed or repealed. It's not going to reset it and undo how the legislature messed with it. But it will allow future initiatives to be protected from partisan legislative interference. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
I would like to add, again, if it got overridden before, now you might have the incentive to go back and reinitiate that, go back and try to get that passed. And this time, if it passes, then we have these protections against it being overridden in the future.
True.
Yeah, Larry, a
Tracy
great
has
example
another.
of that would be Clean Missouri. They messed with Clean Missouri 2 years later by putting a very misleading amendment on the ballot, which barely passed, and now we're stuck with it. But we could go back and do another Clean Missouri amendment, and it would have full effect then.
And Tracy, I see, has a very good question for us as well. Tracy, you want to unmute and tell us?
Yep. So we just passed Amendment 3 last year, and I know they're already putting another amendment on the ballot, calling it Amendment 3. And it's most likely going to be on the same ballot. What happens if they're both on the same ballot and they both pass?
It's a great question. Virginia, do you want me to handle it?
Yes, please.
All right. So if the again, the Respect Missouri Voters Amendment will protect anything that is in the Constitution or in law when it goes into effect. So if something else passes on the same ballot, that is what would be, well, I shouldn't say protected, because Respect Missouri Voters Amendment does not protect anything that the legislature placed on the ballot, like we talked about earlier. It only protects initiatives. So if the new Amendment 3 passes, then whatever is still remaining from the old Amendment 3 would be protected. If the new Amendment 3 fails, then whatever, same story, whatever is still in the Constitution from the old Amendment 3 would still be protected. So whether the new Amendment 3 succeeds or fails, whatever remains from the old Amendment 3 will be protected going forward. So if the new Amendment 3 fails, then the entire old Amendment 3 is protected because it was a citizen initiative, not something that came from politicians. Does that answer your question?
Yep, it does. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, do we have any other questions? All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, I want to thank everybody for
Well,
coming out.
Virginia, before
Yes.
we end, there were a couple of non-policy related questions. And I wanted to go back up to the top and make sure that we covered those as well.
Absolutely.
Let's see. I'm going up to the top here. Anne, you had a question about the procedure. In the affidavit section, I include my middle name to match my voter card, my signature at the bottom without the middle name. Is that right? Also, if someone screws up their signature, do we draw a line through it and let them fill it in on the next line?
Okay, so on the signature line, for that second half of the question, are you talking about one of the signers of the petition? And you can go ahead and unmute yourself, Anne. So I'm going to assume.
Oh, sorry, Anne. I think you got muted again. Try unmuting yourself one more time.
All right.
There we go.
Yes, it's a two-part question. So
Mhm.
what are you asking me?
So on the second part of your question, are you talking about when somebody signs your petition and they mess up their signature?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so you don't have to draw a line through that, and you can't. They are the only ones that can, and then they should initial it,
Mhm.
but they can just drop
Mhm.
down and do the next line. Okay?
And they don't need to cross it out or anything.
It is not required for them to cross it out.
Okay.
On the
Okay.
affidavit
And-
section, you're talking about
Mhm.
your name at the top?
Yes.
Okay. And then down at the bottom, you would sign your legal signature. And I tell
My
most people
legal
that's what you put on
signature.
your driver's license.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, did that answer your question?
Okay. So do I need to? Yes, but do I need to put my middle name in the to match my voter card at the top?
I would put whatever you have on your driver's license because that's what the notary is using for your ID.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Did I miss any others, Tamara?
I'm going down. Tracy, did we get your question answered about Amendment 3 to your satisfaction?
Yep, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. And then Frank got moved to a roster, and Virginia's already taken a note of that.
Yes.
Okay.
I will reach out to him and Field and we'll get him squared away.
Perfect. I believe that takes care of all the questions that I saw in chat.
Great. So again, I want to thank you all for coming out and joining us today. If you have any questions that come up, feel free to send them to policy@respectvoters.org. And Tamara, if you can put that in the chat for them to
You bet.
copy down, I'd appreciate that. Sorry, I should have given you a heads up on that one. Send them to us because we'll be more than happy to get you answers either individually or like this in a group, depending on how frequent the question is. And I hope that you have had these questions answered well for you. And we completely love how well you guys are doing. You're doing such a great job, and we want to thank you all for that. And I will let you go for today.